The airport terminal buzzed with the usual chaos of travelers. Elena stepped off her flight, eager to be home after her long-awaited Europe trip. Her worn backpack hung loosely on her shoulder, a stark contrast to the polished travelers around her. She hadn't slept much on the plane, the stress of her new job looming over her, but now that she was back, everything was about to fall into place. She spotted the baggage carousel coming to life, slowly releasing suitcases one by one. There was a sense of excitement in the air. The long flight was finally behind her. Elena shifted from foot to foot, eyes scanning for her black hard-shell suitcase. The familiar pattern of her travel bag brought her a sense of comfort. She didn't have the luxury of fancy luggage like the others, but this suitcase had been with her for years. Finally, it appeared on the carousel, and with a satisfied smile, she grabbed it, unaware that her black suitcase wasn't the one she'd packed. Leo, meanwhile, stood a few feet away, his sharp eyes watching the conveyor belt with the detached calm of a man who was used to business travel. As a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, the chaos of airports was just another part of his routine. His perfectly tailored suit and confident posture set him apart from the other travelers. His gaze locked on a black suitcase, a near mirror image of his own. He reached out and grabbed it, feeling an odd weight. Something was off. He unzipped the bag, finding clothes that weren't his own. Elena Carter, he read from the tag, and a small smirk tugged at his lips. Leo stood still for a moment, running a hand through his dark hair as he surveyed the terminal. He was confused and a little amused. How had someone managed to swap luggage so perfectly? He pulled out his phone and dialed the number listed on the tag. Elena stepped outside the airport, her fingers clutching the unfamiliar suitcase. She needed to get home, her mind racing with the excitement of a fresh start. But her peace was interrupted when her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She frowned, instinctively answering. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "Hi," came a calm, deep voice on the other end. "I think we have a little mix-up here. You took my suitcase." Elena's heart sank. She turned back to see the suitcase she'd grabbed, a sinking feeling washing over her. "Oh, no," she whispered, panic creeping in. Leo's voice was steady, filled with amusement. "Dead serious. I'm holding a suitcase with your name on it right now." Elena groaned, mentally kicking herself. "I'm so sorry. They look exactly the same. I was in such a rush." "No harm done," Leo responded smoothly, though he couldn't help the small laugh in his voice. "Let's meet and exchange them. I'm sure you'd rather have your things back, right?" "Absolutely," Elena said quickly. "Where are you?" "I'm still at the airport. How about the cafe in Terminal B?" She glanced at her watch. "Give me 10 minutes." 10 minutes later, Elena arrived at the cafe. She stepped inside, the low hum of conversations and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Her eyes scanned the room nervously. There, at a quiet corner table, sat Leo. He looked even more composed than she remembered, his tailored suit and sharp features exuding effortless confidence. She approached him hesitantly, dropping her gaze to the suitcase. "Hey, Leo, right?" He looked up and smiled easily. "Elena, you made it." She set the suitcase between them, feeling her cheeks flush. "Sorry again for the whole luggage mix-up," she apologized. "I swear they looked exactly the same." Leo chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "No harm done? Honestly, it was kind of refreshing. My life could use a little unexpected adventure." Elena smirked. "Right, because getting stuck with my overstuffed suitcase full of budget souvenirs and worn-out sneakers is such an adventure." Leo grinned, his eyes twinkling. "Hey, those souvenirs say a lot about a person." Elena rolled her eyes but smiled. "Well, You're lucky I didn't take something valuable. Leo smirked knowingly. Yeah, you probably would have been disappointed. Just boring business stuff in mine. She opened her suitcase, expecting to find items from her travels, t-shirts and cheap trinkets. But when she unzipped it, her heart skipped a beat. There, neatly folded, was her favorite worn-out hoodie and the travel journal she carried everywhere. Everything's here, she sighed in relief. Thank God. Leo watched her fondly, intrigued by how much meaning she seemed to attach to such simple things. Your travel journal looks interesting, he remarked. Lots of memories in there. Elena flushed. You peeked just enough to make sure it wasn't my stock reports, she teased. Leo's lips twitched upward. You caught me. Elena smiled, then sighed, staring at her journal. Traveling on a budget forces you to appreciate the small things. Leo leaned in slightly, his gaze softening. I like that. Most people rush through life without noticing the details. Elena nodded, her smile gentle. I guess I don't have the luxury to rush through things. Got to make every penny count. Her eyes flicked over to Leo's suitcase, now resting next to hers. The leather gleamed under the cafe lights, an obvious luxury. The brand logo was unmistakable. She looked up at him, raising an eyebrow. Your suitcase, though, it looks like it belongs to someone who doesn't need to think about pennies. Leo chuckled, brushing it off. It's just a suitcase. But a pretty expensive one, she countered, crossing her arms. Leo raised an eyebrow, his tone casual but knowing. What do you do exactly? Finance? Elena tilted her head, scrutinizing him for a moment. Yeah, something like that, Leo said, keeping his expression neutral. She wasn't sure if it was the business air around him or just his calm demeanor, but she assumed he was just another corporate guy. Must be nice, she mused, having a job where you can afford fancy suitcases. Leo shrugged. Work has its perks, but it's not always as glamorous as it seems. Elena leaned back, crossing her arms with a playful smirk. I don't know, Leo. You seem pretty confident, like someone who has everything figured out. He chuckled, clearly amused. Is that a compliment or an accusation? A little bit of both, she grinned. I mean, come on. You're sitting here, cool as a cucumber, like nothing phases you. Leo smiled, but didn't respond immediately. Let's just say I've learned to stay calm under pressure. Elena shook her head, laughing. Well, good for you. Meanwhile, I was freaking out about this luggage mix-up for the past 2 hours. Leo leaned back, observing her with quiet admiration. There was something refreshingly genuine about Elena. She wasn't trying to impress him, wasn't playing games. I'm glad you didn't run off to another city with my bag, he said jokingly. I was starting to think I'd have to track you down. Elena grinned. Hey, I could have disappeared with all your boring business stuff. Leo smirked, tapping the suitcase lightly. Yeah, and you would have been sorely disappointed. The comfortable silence between them lingered. Elena glanced at her watch. I should probably get going. Thanks for being so chill about all this. Leo nodded. No problem, but hey. He hesitated, then added, if you ever want to swap more than just luggage, like travel stories over coffee, let me know. Elena raised an eyebrow. Are you asking me out, Leo? He shrugged playfully, a glint in his eyes. Consider it an investment in interesting conversation. Elena laughed. I'll think about it. As she grabbed her suitcase handle, ready to leave, she felt a strange pull in her chest. Leo watched her walk away, something stirring inside him that he hadn't expected. For once, he wasn't bothered by the fact that she didn't know who he was. As Elena stepped out of the cafe, she found herself smiling. Maybe the luggage mix-up wasn't such a disaster after all. The next morning, Elena couldn't stop thinking about Leo. There was something magnetic about him, a quiet intensity that intrigued her. The way he listened without judgment, his effortless confidence, and the mysterious air he carried made her curious. She hadn't expected to enjoy their conversation, and yet here she was, reflecting on it as she dressed for her first day at her new job. She checked her reflection one last time and made her way out, deciding to meet him again. What was the harm? Just coffee and conversation. At the cafe, Leo was already sitting at the same corner table. He looked up when Elena walked in, smiling warmly. "Elena, glad you came." She slid into the seat across from him, setting her purse down. "I figured I owed you one for the whole luggage fiasco." Leo chuckled. "I wouldn't call it a fiasco, more like an unexpected adventure." Elena smirked. "Right. So, Mr. Finance Guy, what's this meeting really about? You don't strike me as the type to just hang out with random strangers." Leo leaned back, fingers lightly tapping the table. "Honestly, you intrigue me. You're different from most people I meet." Elena raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Different how?" "Well," Leo said, taking a sip of his coffee. "For starters, you don't care about my job or my money." He smiled. "You don't even know who I am." Elena laughed softly. "And I prefer it that way." Leo's eyes softened, and for a moment, the air between them shifted. Elena found herself wondering just how much she was willing to let him in. The cafe was quieter now, just a few lingering patrons nursing their drinks. Elena took a sip of her coffee, watching Leo with a mixture of curiosity and caution. There was something about him that made her want to dig deeper, to understand the man behind the sharp suits and the casual charm. "So," she began, leaning in slightly, "if you're not here just for the coffee, what's the real reason you wanted to meet up?" Leo met her gaze steadily, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something unspoken. He put his cup down, folding his hands in front of him. "Let's just say I don't make it a habit to invite random people out for coffee," he said with a small smile. "But you seem different. You don't care about the usual things. You're not impressed by titles or money. And honestly, that's refreshing." Elena tilted her head, considering his words. "Maybe I've just seen too much of that world to care about it anymore." Leo raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "The world of wealth and power, you mean?" She nodded, her fingers playing with the edge of her mug. "Yeah, I've had enough of the suits, the fancy dinners, and the name-dropping. I wanted something more real, you know?" Leo's expression softened, his eyes lingering on her in a way that made Elena feel like he could see right through her. "I get that," he said quietly. "Most people are just playing a part. You're one of the few who doesn't seem like you're pretending." She couldn't help but smile at his compliment, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. There was something about Leo that made her feel comfortable in a way she hadn't expected. "You're not so bad yourself," she said, leaning back in her chair, "despite the expensive suitcase." Leo laughed, the sound genuine, as if she had just cracked a joke only he truly understood. "Fair enough, but I assure you, I don't get caught up in any of that stuff. I'm just doing what I have to do." Elena raised an eyebrow, sensing there was more to his story. "And what exactly do you have to do, Leo?" He hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Let's just say, sometimes being at the top means you don't get to make all the decisions. There are things happening behind the scenes that you can't control." Elena could see the shift in his demeanor, the way his usual confidence gave way to something more vulnerable. She knew better than to press him on it. "Not yet," At least, she respected that he wasn't ready to open up fully. Instead, she shifted the conversation. "What about you? What do you really want?" Leo looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing the question. Then, finally, he answered in a way that surprised her. "I want to feel like what I'm doing actually matters, that I'm not just another cog in a machine." Elena's gaze softened. She didn't expect such a raw answer, especially not from someone like Leo, who appeared to have it all figured out. She was starting to realize that there was more depth to him than she'd initially thought. The conversation shifted again, this time lighter, as they chatted about travel, favorite books, and random facts about their lives. For the first time in what felt like forever, Elena felt at ease. The pressure to impress, to perform in front of someone, was gone. "So, Leo," Elena said, her curiosity piqued, "do you ever do anything for fun? I mean, aside from work?" He grinned, leaning forward. "Of course, I have my hobbies." "Like what?" she asked. He tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the table. "I've been getting into photography recently. It's my way of seeing the world differently." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Photography? That's unexpected." Leo chuckled. "I like to capture moments, things people don't usually notice. It's not about the perfect shot. It's about the story behind the picture." "Sounds like you're a bit of an artist, then," Elena teased. "Maybe," he said with a shrug. "I don't know if I'm that good, but I enjoy it. What about you? What do you do for fun?" Elena smiled, leaning back in her chair. "Me? I've been trying to do more of what makes me happy. That means less stressing over work, more exploring. I've always wanted to travel more, see the world beyond just ticking off destinations. Maybe just be." Leo's smile was subtle, but sincere. "That's a nice approach. More people should take the time to be instead of constantly trying to do." After a while, Elena glanced at her watch, realizing that they'd been talking for hours. The conversation had been easy, almost effortless, and she didn't want it to end. But the reality of her busy life started to creep in. "I should probably get going," she said reluctantly. "Big day ahead tomorrow." Leo nodded, standing up as she did. "I get it. But I'm glad we had this chance to talk. It's rare to meet someone who doesn't just see the surface." Elena smiled, her eyes meeting his. "Same here. Thanks for the coffee." Leo hesitated, then offered something unexpected. "Would you like to grab dinner sometime? I promise, no business talk. Just two people enjoying a meal." She paused, surprised by the offer. Something in his tone felt genuine, and she found herself saying yes before she even fully processed it. "I'd like that," she said, her voice soft but sure. Leo grinned, pulling out his phone. "I'll set something up. Just say when." As they exchanged numbers, Elena realized that this unexpected connection was something she hadn't anticipated. But now that it was there, she wasn't sure where it might lead. What had started as a simple mix-up over luggage was turning into something far more intriguing than she could have ever imagined. As Elena walked out of the cafe, the cool air hit her face, but it felt different somehow. Her thoughts swirled around her, replaying moments from their conversation, the playful banter, the unexpected depth. Leo wasn't what she had assumed at first, and she found herself wanting to learn more. Back at home, she sat down at her desk, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in a while. Maybe the future wasn't just about her job or her next big move. Maybe it was about taking chances, about stepping into something unknown, something real. And for the first time in a long time, Elena was excited about what was ahead. The next few days passed quickly for Elena. She focused on settling into her new job, her mind occupied with the usual routine of meetings, emails, and getting to know her colleagues. Still, she couldn't help but think back to Leo, to the easy way they'd talked, and the genuine connection she hadn't expected. One evening, after a long day at work, Elena was sitting on her couch scrolling through her phone when a text message lit up the screen. "Hey, Elena, it's Leo. I know you're busy, but I wanted to check in and see if you're still up for dinner this weekend." A smile tugged at her lips. She had expected him to be the type to follow through with something casual, not someone to actually take the time to reach out. She quickly typed a response. "I'd love to. How's Saturday?" Within seconds, a reply came in. "Saturday sounds perfect. I'll make reservations at this place I know. You'll love it. It's not too fancy, promise. Just good food and a relaxed vibe." She could almost hear his voice in the words, that easy confidence that had drawn her to him in the first place. She felt a flutter in her chest as she pressed send. "Sounds great. I'll see you then, Leo." As she put her phone down, she realized how much she was looking forward to it. A dinner, just the two of them. Something about Leo had piqued her curiosity, and she found herself eager to uncover more. Saturday evening arrived, and Elena stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the hem of her dress. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a simple, chic black dress that made her feel comfortable yet polished. She wasn't sure why, but the thought of seeing Leo made her feel a bit nervous in the best way. When she walked into the restaurant, the soft glow of the dimmed lights and the buzz of quiet conversations greeted her. She spotted Leo almost immediately. He was standing by the bar, dressed casually in a well-fitted jacket and jeans, looking effortlessly handsome. "Hey," Elena said, smiling as she approached him. Leo looked up and grinned. "You look amazing," he said, his voice warm and genuine. Elena's cheeks flushed slightly. "Thanks. You look pretty great yourself." As they settled into their booth, the conversation flowed easily. They talked about everything from childhood memories to their favorite movies, laughing and sharing stories. For once, there was no pressure, no expectation, just two people enjoying each other's company. The dinner was a perfect balance of fun and meaningful moments. They joked about their different tastes in music and teased each other over their guilty pleasures. The more they talked, the more Elena realized how much she was drawn to Leo, not just for his calm, composed exterior, but for his openness and the way he listened without judgment. At the end of the night, when they stepped outside into the cool evening air, Elena felt a little lightheaded. "That was really nice," she said, looking up at Leo, who was standing close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. "I'm glad you thought so." Leo smiled down at her, his gaze softening. "I enjoy our time together." Elena smiled back, but there was a moment of hesitation before she spoke. "You know, Leo, you're not like most people I've met. You're real." His eyes met hers, and for a second the world seemed to pause. Then he said softly, "Same goes for you, Elena. There's something different about you, something I can't quite put my finger on." She looked up at him, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "I guess that makes two of us." Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened. Leo and Elena met more frequently, sometimes by chance, other times by choice. Whether it was grabbing a coffee at their usual spot, walking through the park, or simply talking over the phone, they found a rhythm. Leo shared more about his life, about the pressures of running a successful company and the loneliness that came with wealth. Elena opened up about her struggles, about how she had to grow up fast after losing her parents, and how she had built herself from the ground up. And with every conversation, every shared moment, the bond between them grew stronger. But there was still something unspoken, a quiet tension between them as though both of them were unsure where this was heading, or if it was even meant to head anywhere at all. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the city lights, Elena couldn't hold it in any longer. "Leo," she began, her voice softer than usual, "why do you keep making time for me? I mean, you've got a million things to do, and I'm not some high society girl who can just waltz into your world. I'm not your type." Leo turned to face her, his expression thoughtful. "You're wrong. You're exactly my type." Her heart skipped a beat at the intensity in his eyes. She opened her mouth to protest, but he placed a finger gently against her lips. "You don't need to be like anyone else, Elena. You've been real with me from the start, and that's what I value more than anything else." She blinked, overwhelmed by his honesty. A part of her still couldn't believe it, that this connection, this unexpected bond, was real. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you," Leo continued, his voice quiet. "But here you are, and I'm not letting you go." Elena's breath caught in her throat as his words sunk in. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time, and felt something stir deep within her, a sense of certainty that had eluded her for so long. "I'm not letting you go either," she whispered. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. There was no denying the growing connection between them, but both of them hesitated at times, unsure whether to take the next step. Elena wasn't one to rush into anything, and Leo had his own reservations. But every time they were together, it felt like the world was aligned just for them. Then, one evening, as they sat at their favorite cafe again, Leo reached for her hand across the table. "Elena," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I've been thinking about this a lot, about us, and I want to ask you, no more waiting around. Are you ready for this? For us?" Elena looked down at their intertwined fingers, her heart racing. She had always been the one to hold back, but something inside her knew this was worth the leap. "I am," she said softly, her gaze locking with his. "I'm ready." Leo smiled, his expression lighting up with a mixture of relief and joy. "Good, because I don't want to waste another minute." And in that moment, everything clicked into place. The luggage mix-up, the casual meetings, the shared laughter. It had all led them here, to this very moment. It wasn't a fairy tale, and it wasn't some grand gesture. But for Elena and Leo, it was something real. They had both found something they hadn't expected: love, trust, and the kind of connection that defied all expectations. As they stood there, hand in hand, looking out over the city lights, they knew this was just the beginning of something incredible, and they were ready to face it together.